In this webinar, we are going to ask the question, why should you invest in shares? The reason must be because you want to make money from the share market. From your investments, obviously. Or to put it more plainly, your underlying goal is that you want to become rich. I am here to tell you that becoming rich is something that you can definitely do, if you have sufficient determination and patience. Because becoming rich is a choice that you make. You either choose to be rich or you choose to be poor. Let us consider that idea. In this life, there are really only two ways to make money. You either work for it or you make your money work for you. There is no other way, unless you have a rich uncle who's going to die and leave you a fortune. But for most of us, that is the reality. And nobody has ever become rich by working for a salary. In the history of mankind, this has never happened, and for a very good reason. Your boss will never pay you more than just enough to keep you sitting behind that desk. He would be a bad businessman if he did. So your salary will never do more than just keep up with your immediate needs and wants. But it will never make you rich. To become rich, you need to get your money working for you. But what does that mean? Well, first of all, it means that you have to beat inflation. If you can't beat inflation, then you're going backwards. So what types of investment beat inflation? For the private investor, there are really only two: property and shares. So let us compare these two investments. Property is a difficult investment for private investors for a few reasons. Firstly, it requires huge lump sums of cash. Just to get into the property market, you will need about 100,000 rand, and even then, you will be borrowing most of the money that you invest. But you can buy shares on the JSE with just 5,000 rand. The second problem is dealing costs. In the property market, to buy in and sell out of a property, you are looking at anything between 8 and 10%. In the share market, your turnaround dealing costs, in other words, to buy in and sell out, are around 3%. The third problem is liquidity. How quickly can you sell your property? 3 months, if you're lucky? Quite often a lot longer. In the share market, I can sell my shares in a few seconds with a couple of keystrokes on my computer, and the money is in my bank in 3 days. And I could sell 20% of my shares if I wanted to, something you can't even think about in the property market. And then, of course, property is very politically sensitive. If the political situation gets worse, which it often does in this country, your property will lose value immediately, and you won't be able to sell out quickly. Some shares, on the other hand, actually benefit from increased political risk. This is because they get most of their income in a hard currency, like dollars or pounds or euros. When the political situation gets worse and the rand falls, companies like this do better because they are getting more and more rands for their dollars or hard currencies. They are known as rand hedge shares. As we all know, shares pay dividends. Property pays rent. Rent means tenants, and tenants mean trouble. My share certificates don't phone me up in the middle of the night and ask me to come and fix the toilet. If you invest in property, looking after your tenants can be a huge problem. They sometimes don't pay their rent on time, and they sometimes damage your property. Shares have none of these problems. To be clear, the house that you live in is always worth owning because it will stabilize your balance sheet for the bank manager and because you don't have a problem with tenants. But when you buy the place next door and seek to rent it out, you may be making a mistake. Finally, if you really want to invest in property, why not buy shares in a good property company? There are dozens of property companies trading on the JSE. If you do that, then you will not have any of the problems associated with investing in property, and you will have whatever growth there is in the property market. Over the past 30 years, blue chip shares on the JSE have doubled their value roughly every 4.5 years, and many shares have done much better than that. Consider this logarithmic chart of Santam shares going back to 1985. Over that 35-year period, the share has gone from 90 cents a share to over 300 Rand a share. And that period includes the 1987 crash. It includes the 1998 dot-com crash and the 2008 subprime crisis. But Santam shares just kept on going up through all these crises and through the long years of the Zuma-Gupta period, always paying 2 dividends a year. If you had invested 5,000 Rands worth of Santam shares in 1985, today they would be worth about 1.6 million, excluding dividends. So by far the best place for you to invest your surplus cash is in the share market. But of course, there are a number of ways to invest in the share market. You could buy an insurance policy, or a unit trust, or you could get a stockbroking company to make your decisions for you. Alternatively, you could decide to do your own investing on the share market and choose which shares you're going to buy and when you're going to buy them. So why is it better to invest directly on the share market for yourself? The first and most important reason is that nobody cares about your money except you. I don't care about your money. I care about my money. The salesman who sells you that unit trust or insurance policy only cares about how much commission he is going to make. The fund manager at the unit trust or insurance company gets his salary every month whether your shares go up or down. So he really does not care what happens to your investments. You, on the other hand, care very much. You will look at the price of those shares every day. Hopefully by now, I have convinced you that it is best to first of all invest in the share market rather than in property, and secondly, to take control of your financial affairs and make your own decisions in the market. If that is the case, then you really only have one more decision to make, and that is, what sort of strategy are you going to adopt? Are you going to buy shares and hold them indefinitely? Or are you going to buy and sell shares from time to time as the market changes? A study done in the United States has shown that a person who bought and sold the Dow Jones Industrial Index using a 200-day moving average over the 110 years from 1900 to 2010 would have made 10 times as much money as someone who just bought the Dow in 1900 and held it until 2010. So you can see there is a great benefit to trading the market occasionally, investing here, moving your investments and so forth. If you do not know about using moving averages in the share market, that is covered in our webinar on moving averages. But the point is that strategic changes to your portfolio from time to time is far more profitable than just holding on no matter what happens. So now, hopefully we have reached the point where you are persuaded that the share market is your best avenue of investment and that you need to make your own decisions for yourself. If that is the case, then you should be motivated to learn as much as you can about the art of choosing the right shares and timing your transactions for the best profit.